A beloved grandmother is found murdered in her garage.
Her purse was sitting on the first step, and she wasn't breathing.
Her lips and face were very blue.
A mysterious woman is caught fleeing the scene of the crime.
The lady was wearing all black. I just know something's not right.
She just said, I didn't do anything. You kind of get that gut, something happened.
The victim's loved ones suspect a love triangle was involved.
My mother had the worst taste in men.
She just kind of kept that pattern pretty much all of our life.
And the investigation leads to a romantic rival willing to snuff out the competition by any means necessary.
She was obsessed.
She put spells on them to try to split them up.
Can't have a murder in the state of Mississippi without a little voodoo or hoodoo in it.
Leaving a wake of destruction in her path.
I was going to be her perfect scapegoat.
Anybody that goes 9 months planning somebody's murder is not sorry.
I just don't want people to think I'm this monster for some reason.
February 11th, 2020. For small business owners Trent and Stephanie Rogers, it's another busy Tuesday morning in Baldwin, Mississippi. One of the employees at their grocery store, 63-year-old Pamela Britt, isn't feeling well, so they tell her to take a break.
She thought her blood pressure was messed up, and she was gonna go home and maybe see if she could just take a nap and rest a minute.
But when more than an hour passes without hearing from Pam, they begin to get worried.
Around 12 o'clock, 12:05, Stephanie had told me, Pam didn't make it back, which that's not like Pam. She come up and talked to me and asked if I would call her, and I tried to call her and I couldn't get an answer.
Trent said, what do you think I need to do? I said, I don't feel good about it. I think you should go check on her.
Since Pam lives only a few minutes away, they decide to pay her a visit.
I go to the house and I get out and look around. I knock on the door, and then I didn't get an answer. And then I decided I was gonna check and see if maybe there was a door unlocked. I get to the back of the house to open the door, and there was a lady there that opened the door.
To Trent's surprise, it's a woman he doesn't recognize from their small town.
The lady was wearing all black. She had black pants, black shirt, and she had a black coat with a hood on it, and she was wearing a black headband. She was real pale, and she was sweaty. It looked like she had been doing a lot of work. I just know something's not right.
Since Pamela lives so close to the store, Trent is familiar with the comings and goings around her house and most people in town. This woman, however, appears to be a total stranger.
I asked her where Pam was at, and she said that Pam doesn't live here. At first, I thought I had the wrong house, and I called Stephanie and asked her if that was the house that I was supposed to be at.
He described the house and the location, and I said, yes, that is where she's living now. My mind was just racing. I really didn't know what was going on. I was trying to put it all together. I just knew I just had to get there. When I drove up, I immediately take my phone out and I dial 911. I give him the address.
A few minutes later, the woman in black leaves the house and begins walking up the road. Trent follows her, and as responding officer Nicola Ward approaches, the woman suddenly flees into a nearby field.
I saw Trent, and Trent was pointing to the field, and I saw a suspect down there. So I pulled up, got out of my car, and went down the hill. I was attempting to get her to stop. I notified, I'm Officer Ward with the police department. I need to speak with you. Stop. And she continued to walk. I told her to stop again in a pretty hefty voice, and she started to pick up speed. I had to kind of run a little bit, catch up with her. I was getting closer, and I told her to stop, and she just said, I didn't do anything. You kind of get that gut when somebody automatically tells you you didn't do anything, something happened. So I just took her down.
After restraining the mysterious woman, officers try to question her.
I wasn't for sure if she had any weapons on her or anything. I tried to ask her who she was. She wouldn't say anything. I asked her why she was there. She wouldn't say anything.
One of the officers stays with the woman, while the other returns to Pam's house with Trent and Stephanie.
We did not make entry into the house at that particular point in time. The door was locked.
Trent tells them we need to get in this house. And we eventually end up finding Pam in the garage. She had her keys in her hand. Her purse was sitting on the first step, and she wasn't breathing. She didn't have a pulse. It just looked very natural, like she just had some sort of medical episode and just fell over dead.
But the mystery woman's presence suggests another scenario.
I knew that somebody dressed all in black coming out of someone else's house shouldn't be happening. And then it was like, we got to figure out, why is this happening?
Pamela Britt was born in the nearby city of West Point in 1957. Baldwin is a small town, so she is a familiar face to everyone, including police.
My mother had 4 brothers and 1 sister. She was the middle child.
My mother pretty much stayed in West Point until about 16 years old. She married my father, and she got pregnant with me when she was 17 and then had me a month after she turned 18. I don't think they were married maybe a year.
Although her first marriage failed, Pam didn't give up on love. She continued to search for Mr. Right, floating in and out of relationships for many years.
When I was about 10 years old, she met my brother and sister's father. They stayed together probably about 5 years, maybe. We moved after they separated.
Me and my brother and sister grew up in Nettleton. We had a good childhood. She did what she could to support us.
After her children had grown up and started families of their own, in 2018, Pam moved to Baldwin to be closer to her daughters and make a fresh start. She found work at the Rogers grocery store.
I met Pam through her daughter, Robin. I knew she had a background in working at, grocery stores, convenience stores, retail stores. That's all she had done her whole life. Pam could just relate to anybody. She was just a people person.
Outside of work, Pam spent most of her time with her 7 grandchildren.
Being a grandmother was the best thing to her in the world. She pretty much helped raise my kids with me. She had them all the time. They were always at her house on the weekends if, they loved going over there.
It didn't take long for Pam to take up with a new beau. In 2018, she began dating a handsome 45-year-old man named David Scribner.
My mother told me he was a good guy. She didn't really say much. I can only remember having a few conversations with her about him during this whole time they were dating. She kind of was doing her own thing, had finally got in a house and was doing really good for herself. I was happy about that.
But Pam's newfound contentment has come to a crashing halt now that her body has been discovered in her garage. Detectives take a closer look at the crime scene.
There's no obvious sign of any sort of blunt force trauma. There's no gunshot wounds that are apparent or anything like that. What I did notice was marks on her wrist where it looked like something thin had been tied around her wrist. She had what looked like some electrical burn marks on her chest. And her lips and face were very blue, consistent with being without oxygen for some time. So we had a pretty good idea that asphyxiation was the reason. The woman, all dressed in black, had a large multicolored handbag that she was carrying at the time that she was detained, and started going through what items the lady had in the bag.
What they find is beyond incriminating.
There was a pretty stout plastic that you wrap around a pallet of stuff to keep it from coming apart. It was a roll of that. A taser was also in her bag.
There was a dark navy pillowcase and some plastic wrap and some zip ties.
We figured the pillowcase was put over her head and saran wrapped around her face where she could not breathe no more.
So the first thing we're trying to do is identify who the woman in black is that we've got in the back of a patrol car and try to figure out what the motive is for her to do what she has done to Pam.
Coming up, investigators get a possible lead on their mystery woman.
I asked if she knew of anybody that Pam might have been having any kind of trouble with, and she said David's ex.
Leading to a potential stalker.
He put a security camera up and caught footage of a woman in a coat. It never shows her face.
While evidence is being collected at Pam Britt's home, the first officers on the scene take their suspect to police headquarters.
She didn't want to speak, so she was placed in jail, and she sat in jail.
The woman in black remains a mystery. But back at the crime scene, detectives find a potential lead among Pam's belongings.
Pam's phone was in her purse, and I looked through her call log and saw that she had been on the phone with Genevieve Scribner, who is also a person that I know from growing up in Nettleton, Mississippi. So I called her, and that's when we found out that Pam had been dating her son, David Scribner, from Nettleton. I asked Genevieve if she knew of anybody that Pam might have been having any kind of trouble with or things of that nature, and she said, yeah, David's ex, Yvonne. She felt like Yvonne had been poking around their house on a couple of occasions, and that she thought that maybe that's who that was.
Investigators must determine if Yvonne was jealous and decided to get rid of the competition. To learn more about Pam's relationship with David, police contact her daughter.
Me and my husband were at the eye clinic. When I got home, I had a phone call from the Baldwin Police Department. I called the police, and they said they would be out to our house. And they showed up and they told me that my mom had passed. I didn't understand. Everything gets a little foggy after that.
When I first heard that my mother was murdered, I was at work. My sister calls me and is in a panic, just screaming that she's dead, she's dead. I think I just sat, just at work, just kind of stunned. It was a shock.
I really didn't know who could do something like that.
Robin can't tell police anything about Yvonne, but she isn't surprised to learn her mother's death might be linked to her latest boyfriend.
My mother had the worst taste in men. Absolute worst.
She says Pam rushed into the relationship with David after a string of family tragedies.
My brother had just lost his son in July. He had drowned in a swimming pool. Then we turned around and had my uncle, who was my mother's brother, pass away in November.
I knew my mother was hurting from all of this, so she got on a dating website and she found this guy, David Scribner.
Robin explains to detectives that things took an alarming turn soon after Pam and David started dating, 1 month before her murder.
My mother had said that she had gotten her car one time and there was a pile of rocks that was placed in weird positioning in her floorboard. And this seemed to be happening at David's home in Nettleton. They put a security camera up and caught footage of a woman in a coat. It never shows her face, but you could see her go into the car and reaching under and getting something out from under the car. She didn't know what was going on with it. She had called my sister, telling her about it.
David's mother suspected that it may be David's upset ex, Yvonne. She says when this happened in January, she didn't think the matter was serious enough to bring to police.
Yvonne worked at a restaurant where the waitresses wear all black, and this particular person in the video was also wearing all black. So they logically thought it was probably Yvonne.
In a town as small as Baldwin, Detective Young remembers Yvonne from his childhood. However, when he pays a visit to the jail where the woman in black is being held and refusing to speak, Detective Young does not recognize her.
So everything leaned towards Yvonne, but we knew the woman we had in custody was not Yvonne.
Now, detectives believe the woman in custody may be the woman in the video. Detectives plan to use fingerprints to ID the woman in black and track down Yvonne to be certain that she wasn't involved.
The detective, he had contacted me and he said, Yvonne, we need to talk. And I said, about what? He said, about this murder. And I said, that has nothing to do with me.
A few hours have passed in the murder investigation of Pamela Britt, and the woman in black is still not talking. To make certain that the woman they have in custody is not Yvonne, Detective Young utilizes his small-town connections to bring her in for an interview.
I got a message on Facebook, and at first I wouldn't go in. He said, Yvonne, if you really thought I was going to arrest you, you'd be in handcuffs right now. And I said, that has nothing to do with me. I was at work. I know for a fact I was at work. I have proof.
When Detective Young asks Yvonne about her relationship with David, she tells them it ended in 2013.
The first 5 years me and David were together, everything was great, wonderful. I was madly in love, what I thought.
According to Yvonne, it was a messy breakup, which led to a custody battle over their children.
My girls had been taken from me in 2018. I was fighting in the court system trying to get them back.
The court ruled to leave the children with David. Then, in 2019, she had to deal with another complication: David's new girlfriend. But it wasn't Pamela Britt. Yvonne says it was a woman named Shawnie Young.
I had got a message on Facebook from someone named Shawnie. I didn't have a clue who she was. And then one of my kids had told me that's Daddy's girlfriend. I think Shawnie's main reason was to fill me out, to make sure that I didn't have feelings for David and that I didn't want David back, and I let her know real quick I'm done with him.
Detectives consider the possibility that Shawnie might have had an axe to grind with Pam as well. After confirming her alibi, detectives conclude that Yvonne was not involved in Pamela's murder. Before they can talk to David about the relationship, he contacts them.
I got a Facebook message from David Scribner, and he asked that I call him as soon as I could, so I did.
David tells detectives that he's heard they have someone in custody for Pam's murder. Like Yvonne, he believes it might be his ex-girlfriend, Shawnie.
He explained to me that Shawnie had been staying with her cousin, Leanne Mann. She reached out to David, and on that particular morning had left sometime between 3 and 6 a.m. in her car under the pretense of going to work at a restaurant local in Corinth, Mississippi, but at this particular time had not returned. And when Leanne started doing some investigating, she had not been at work at all that day.
According to David, Shawnie had never gotten over their breakup, which occurred just prior to his meeting Pam in 2018. He says this led to an unhealthy obsession.
He said she was continuously talking with Leanne about David and Pam's relationship.
It's now 24 hours into the investigation, and detectives ask Leanne to come in and give a statement. She says she's already heard about Pam's murder, and her friend Beth Reed accompanies her to the station. Shawnie Young grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi. Though she was one of 3 sisters, Shawnie was always the center of attention.
We were never close growing up. She was very spoiled. Me and Shawnie and my other sister, we done pageants, and she didn't play well with others. She always thought she was entitled to something more.
Shawnie was pretty mean back then. My brother and my sister both. Shawnie would beat them and blame them for stuff that she had done cruel.
When Shawnie grew up, she moved to New York and got married. When she returned in 2017, she was a single mother with children by 3 different men. And according to Leanne and Beth, she'd already found her next provider.
She told me that she had met David online, that David had bought her a bus ticket to come and visit. David, for whatever reason, felt obligated maybe to help her.
They say Shawnie fell hopelessly in love. But by 2019, David had moved on.
David had lost interest in Shawnie. He started dating Pamela Britt.
Leanne and Beth say Shawnie wasn't willing to accept defeat.
Shawnie showed up at Leanne's house about on or little bit before Thanksgiving 2019. It was not supposed to be a long-term thing at all. Shawnie had other plans. Shawnie told us that she had come back because David wanted her to. They were in love and they were going to be together.
Her take was he was in love with her and not Pam. Said that he didn't want Pam.
Coming up, Shawnie's obsession turns deadly.
I feel like she was patterning her as a hunter would a buck deer.
And investigators find evidence of a murder plot.
When you look at everything on paper, it's just a wow factor that everything felt like it did.
Leanne Mann, the cousin of suspect Shawnie Young, tells investigators that as soon as Shawnie moved in with her, she began fixating on David and his new girlfriend.
David. There was not a day that would go by that it wasn't all about him.
I had been friends with Leanne for 30 years. I didn't like that Shawnie just come in on Leanne. I was very creeped out by Shawnie's presence. From the very second I first met her, she was obsessed. She never spoke of her children. She never spoke of her husband. She never spoke of anything outside of David and Pam.
Leanne and Beth say that Shawnie wanted to be closer to David, who lived just an hour away in Nettleton. Leanne says Shawnie even recruited her own children in her attempts to win David back.
Her kids, her sons, had got in contact, and if I recall, said Shawnie died because of cancer. Just to see how David would react.
When her ploys to gain David's attention were unsuccessful, Shawnie resorted to extreme measures.
Leanne kind of told her that I'd read tarot cards and did things like that. She had asked me several times if I would do something to break Pam and David up. And it was love spells. It was darker type magic.
She wanted him to think about her 24/7, and that was what she was trying to do. You can't have a murder in the state of Mississippi without a little voodoo or hoodoo in it.
I would not do it. I told her from the jump that I didn't want any part of it. I said, I don't work with that kind of magic. Shawnie wanted David for herself at all cost. She did not see anything outside of David. She was completely consumed with this man.
Leanne says that's when Shawnie decided to change her tactics.
Shawnie would take my car and would not come home. I didn't know where she was going. Shawnie would be off doing things that I didn't know.
Looking back now, I feel like she was stalking Pam. Just being gone all of those hours. And looking back now, I can remember Shawnie holding her phone and showing me Pam's Facebook page. That gave Shawnie everything she needed to find Pam, what she drives, follow her home. Now she knows where she lives.
She said that she had put a tracker made out of a cell phone that she had taped up on Pam's car so she would know where Pam was at all times.
I feel like she was patterning her as a hunter would a buck deer.
Leanne says she was becoming increasingly concerned about Shawnie's behavior. On the morning of February 11th, the day Pam was murdered, she says she'd finally had enough and reached out to David online.
Shawnie had took my car to work that morning, and she'd not got home yet. I figured if she was anywhere, she was out trying to find him.
Later that afternoon, Leanne went to the police station to report her car stolen.
One of the patrol officers found the car at Fish Lake later that evening. When we ran the VIN number, it came back to Leanne Mann. We took all the items out of the vehicle. What we did find of interest was a driver's license that belonged to Leanne Mann and bus tickets with Leanne's name on it. So, I mean, it's pretty apparent that Shawnie had used Leanne's driver's license to purchase tickets back to Indiana in Leanne's name. We kind of felt like at that point we knew exactly who we had and exactly what the motive was. The woman in black is Shawnie Young.
They also find an ominous journal entry in Shawnie's handwriting.
The note said that she was going to make this happen. How today was the day, and that she was going to do away with Pam. She wanted David, intended to have him.
Hours after Pamela Britt was found murdered in her garage, Baldwin police are putting together a solid case against her boyfriend's ex, Shawnie Young.
Before Leanne, before Beth, Baldwin Police Department had a suspect for murder with no motive. When Leanne and Beth left after their statements, Baldwin Police Department had a murder with a suspect and a motive. The motive seemed to be jealousy, seemed to be lust, obsession, crazy love.
But when investigators take a look at Shawnie's social media pages, they're surprised by what they find.
So they probably ended up actually beating end of 2017 or early 2018 and started spending some time together.
At the moment, I thought Shawnie and David dated for months. After knowing the case, it came to 10 to 12 days, maybe at the most, that Shawnie and David ever spent time together.
It's not like, there was any rings put on it. By 2019, she was fixated on David and Pam's relationship all day, every day. David, he was not interested in her.
Detectives obtain a search warrant for Shawnie's electronic devices and find further evidence she plotted out Pam's death.
The search history on her phones was, how to kill somebody in different ways. How long does it take somebody to die, and how do you do away with a body? Can you boil a body away? Just crazy things.
When you look at everything on paper, it's just a wow factor that everything felt like it did.
One of the phones confiscated from Shawnie appears to be the tracking device Leanne mentioned. Investigators assume this was placed under the car in the surveillance footage.
It was plastic wrapped and taped up, which is the one that we believe she put underneath the car when it was parked down at David Scribner's house, and how she tracked her to where she lived at.
Investigators theorize that there was a reason Shawnie tried to disguise her identity.
We feel like the suspect was dressing in black to represent Yvonne on camera. She was wanting Yvonne to go down for this murder charge.
I'd never met her, but obviously she had met me because she knew what I looked like, how I dressed, how I fixed my hair. Shawnie was setting the stage for everything that was going to happen to be all my fault anyway. I was going to be her perfect scapegoat. If she hadn't been caught, I would have been arrested.
When the fingerprint testing comes back, police are able to positively identify the woman in black as Shawnie Vell Young. That evening, Shawnie is charged with the murder of Pamela Britt.
I think with the phone that she put on the car, she tracked Pam to work and then from work to home. And she set up her plan to kill Pam.
I believe that Shawnie had waited outside the house until Pam came home. She took the pillowcase that she had in her bag, and as Pam was walking up the steps to go into the house and started to unlock the door, I think she put that pillowcase over her head, jerked her off the steps, and tased her, zip-tied her up, and wrapped plastic around her head until she suffocated to death. Evil. That one was evil.
But when Shawnie breaks her silence, her story is far from expected.
You do know I'm the guy that's trying to put this puzzle together, right?
Oh my God, for the rest of my life, I'm protecting myself.
While Shawnie Vell Young is being held on a $5 million bond, prosecutors begin preparing their case for trial.
In law enforcement, it's not what you know, it's what you can show, what you can prove.
She was caught coming out of the garage area where Pam's body was found. In the bag that she had with her coming out were items that were used to create death in the manner that Pam had died, and that was by asphyxiation. There was a taser that matched the marks on Pam's chest and shoulder where she had been tased. She had zip ties that had been around Pam's wrist. We had the history of the obsession that she had with David, just solidifying the motive about why she wanted Pam out of the picture. So the evidence was mounted up there. We charged her with capital murder, which in the state of Mississippi, if you're found guilty of capital murder, the death penalty is on the table.
In the month following Pamela's murder, Shawnie has refused to make any kind of statement. But in March 2020, due to uncertainties surrounding the COVID pandemic, she breaks her silence.
When we sat down, the Lee County Correction Center was just evil, just sitting in a room across the table. She would cry 1 minute, holler 1 minute, talk 1 minute, go back to crying.
Just get yourself on it.
According to Shawnie, she wasn't the one obsessed with losing David. Pam was, and she wanted to get rid of Shawnie.
I've never hurt anybody in my whole life. Never. Not one person. One time I defend myself, this happened.
Take a deep breath. You want to tell me about it?
She wanted to meet because she caught me and him was screwing around. She was afraid she was losing him. Me and her talked, and she attacked me. I just don't want people to think I'm this monster because I'm not. I'm really not. I struggle with this every day.
She tried to claim self-defense and that sort of thing, but there was absolutely zero evidence on any of the 4 phones that Shawnie had. There was zero evidence on the phone that Pam had that they had ever had any kind of conversation at all.
I'm going to talk to the lawyer now because, oh my God, for the rest of my life, I'm protecting myself.
Over the next few years, while Shawnie remains imprisoned, her defense attorneys try to keep the case from going to court. They claim she is unfit to stand trial. But in 2023, she is ruled competent. Rather than risk a death sentence, Shawnie agrees to plead guilty to second-degree murder.
Anybody that goes 9 months planning somebody's murder is not sorry. She's sorry she got caught. She wasn't sorry for what she done. Second-degree murder felt like a slap in my face.
They gave her 27 years. She took a plea deal that she should not have been given, in my opinion.
I don't think it's fair that Shawnie was able to take my mother away from her kids, her grandkids, her life, and then she still has the opportunity to walk out of that prison.
Pam was a very, very good person, and what happened to her, she does not deserve. And the sentence that this lady got is not enough. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I don't want my mother remembered as the woman that got in between somebody and a guy. She was just loving and just funny.
I want people to know that my mom, she was a good person. She was a good person, and she loved her family. She had the biggest, beautiful smile. My family will never be the same after everything. And it hasn't been.
Texas, 1998. A heat wave grips the land like a fist that refuses to loosen. Air thick enough to taste. Roads stretch endlessly through dust and silence, cutting across a landscape where nothing moves unless it has to. And on one of those roads, just past midnight, something happens that no one can explain, something that will refuse to be forgotten, even decades later. It begins with a truck. Engines still warm. Headlights off. Driver's door hanging open like a question no one can answer. The radio inside crackles faintly, stuck between stations, producing a hollow whisper that blends with the sound of wind dragging itself across dry earth. No skid marks. No signs of a struggle. Just a vehicle left behind in a place where no one ever stops. And no driver. By dawn, the discovery spreads fast. Too fast. A missing girl, 18. Local. Known. The kind of person who waves to strangers, who remembers names, who had her future mapped out in neat, careful lines. College brochures stacked on her desk. A part-time job at a roadside diner. A life that was supposed to begin, not end in the dark. Her name echoes through police radios before the sun fully rises. Deputies arrive first. Then investigators. Then curiosity. The scene becomes a silent theater of motion, boots stepping carefully, voices lowered, eyes scanning for anything out of place. But that's the problem. Nothing looks out of place. The truck sits as if its driver simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. They check inside. Keys still in the ignition. A half-empty soda in the cup holder. A cassette tape looping a broken recording. 10 seconds of static, then silence, then static again. Over and over. A detail, so small, it almost feels meaningless. But in cases like this, nothing is ever meaningless. The ground tells part of the story. Tire tracks lead in. None lead out. A set of footprints, faint, distorted by the wind, circle near the driver's side. Maybe hers. Maybe not. Another set overlaps them, but it's incomplete. Broken. As if whoever left them knew exactly where to step and where not to. Within hours, the search begins. Volunteers gather. Locals. Friends. People who refuse to believe that someone can simply disappear in a place this open. Dogs are brought in, noses low, tracing invisible trails across hardened dirt. Helicopters cut through the sky, their blades scattering dust in wide, desperate circles. The land stretches for miles, offering no cover, yet somehow hiding everything. No body, no scream, no trace. The diner becomes the last known point of normalcy. Investigators reconstruct her final hours with surgical precision. She finished her shift at 11:47 p.m., clocked out, smiled, said goodnight. Nothing unusual, nothing that hinted at fear, or urgency, or the kind of dread that leaves marks in memory. She walked to her truck alone. That detail repeats itself in every report. Alone. No one saw anyone follow her. No one noticed a vehicle waiting nearby. No one heard anything out of place. It's as if the night itself swallowed her whole. But then the cracks begin to show. A customer comes forward. Says he saw a car parked across the street. Engine running, lights off. Dark color. Maybe black. Maybe blue. He can't be sure. Another witness claims they heard raised voices behind the diner earlier that evening. A man. Angry. Low. Sharp tones. But when pressed for details, the memory fades. Faces blur. Words dissolve. The investigation pivots. They start building a timeline, second by second. Who was there? Who left? Who stayed longer than they should have? Every name is written down. Every movement scrutinized. In a town this small, patterns stand out. One name surfaces more than once. A stranger. He wasn't from here. That alone makes him visible. People remember outsiders. He'd been seen at the gas station earlier that week, asking questions about roads, about routes, about places that don't show up on maps. He lingered too long, watched too closely. And then, just like that, he's gone. He becomes the first real lead. Deputies track him across county lines, following a trail built from gas receipts and secondhand sightings. For a moment, the case feels alive, like it's breathing, moving, heading somewhere. But when they find him, everything collapses. He has an alibi. Solid. Verifiable. Witnesses who place him miles away at the exact time the girl vanished. Surveillance footage. Timestamps that don't lie. He cooperates fully, almost too fully, answering every question before it's even asked. Just like that, the lead disappears. The town begins to shift. Fear doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in slowly, filling the spaces between normal routines. Doors start locking earlier. Parents call their children inside before sunset. Conversations grow quieter, more guarded. Because if it wasn't a stranger, then it was someone closer. Someone they know. Investigators circle back to the inner circle. Friends, coworkers, family, and then the boyfriend. Young, nervous, present at every vigil, always nearby, always watching. He says they argued earlier that week. Nothing serious, just stress, just life. But stress has a way of escalating, of turning small cracks into fractures. He claims he was home that night, alone. No witnesses, no proof, just his word. They dig deeper. Phone records show gaps. Periods where no calls were made, no messages sent. Not unusual, but not helpful either. His story doesn't change, but it doesn't strengthen. It just sits there incomplete. He becomes a person of interest, but not enough. Not enough to arrest. Not enough to charge. Not enough to bring her back. Days turn into weeks. Weeks stretch into months. The search teams thin out. The helicopters stop flying. The dogs are called back. The land returns to silence, as if nothing ever happened there. And then, just when the case begins to fade from headlines, something surfaces. A necklace. Caught in barbed wire miles from where the truck was found. Weathered. Tangled. But unmistakable. Her mother identifies it immediately. A gift from years ago. Something she wore every day. The discovery reignites everything. Search crews return. The area is combed again. More aggressively this time. Grid patterns. Marked zones. Every inch examined. If the necklace is here, then she was here. or someone wants them to believe she was. But once again, the land refuses to speak. No footprints, no disturbed earth, no additional evidence, just a single object placed or dropped with terrifying precision. Investigators begin to consider a new possibility. This wasn't random. This wasn't chaotic. This was controlled. Every move calculated. Every trace minimized. Whoever did this understood the terrain, understood the timing, understood exactly how to make someone disappear without leaving behind anything that could lead back to them. The case file grows thicker. Photographs, maps, statements. Each page another attempt to impose order on something that refuses to make sense. Leads are chased across counties, across states. Each one promising. Each one ending the same way. Nowhere. Inside the evidence room, items are cataloged and stored. The necklace, the cassette tape, fibers collected from the truck, and one detail that barely registers at the time, a partial fingerprint lifted from the inside of the driver's door. Smudged. Incomplete. Useless. At least that's what they believe. Because in 1998, the technology isn't there yet. Databases are limited. Matches depend on what's already been recorded. And whoever left that print isn't in the system. So it's filed away. Forgotten. Outside, life continues. Or, at least, something resembling it. The town adapts, reshapes itself around the absence. But the absence never leaves. It lingers in the spaces between conversations, in the way people hesitate before answering questions about that night. Because deep down, everyone knows the same thing. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was something else. Something deliberate. And somewhere out there, the person responsible is still walking free, blending into crowds, living an ordinary life, carrying a secret that no one else can see. But secrets don't stay buried forever. Not in a place like this. Not in a case like this. Because time doesn't erase evidence. It preserves it, waiting for the moment when the world finally learns how to read what was always there. And when that moment comes, everything changes. But in 1998, none of that matters yet. All they have is a truck, an empty road, and a silence so complete, it feels like the truth itself has vanished. The silence doesn't break. It deepens. Weeks after the truck was found, the case begins to rot from the inside out. Not because investigators stop working, but because every direction they turn leads to the same dead end. No body. No weapon. No clear suspect. Just fragments of a night that refuses to come together. But something shifts beneath the surface. It starts with a detail that didn't seem important at first. A receipt. Crumpled. Half buried in the floorboard of the truck. Missed during the initial sweep, only discovered when a second forensic team goes over the vehicle with slower hands and sharper eyes.
Gas station.
Timestamp: 12:16 a.m. That's after she left the diner, which means she didn't go straight home. The timeline fractures. Investigators retrace the route from the diner to the location where the truck was found. The gas station sits along that path, a flickering island of fluorescent light in an otherwise empty stretch of road. A place where people stop without thinking. A place where something could happen without drawing attention. They pull surveillance footage. Grainy, black and white. Time-coded but unreliable. The camera captures the pumps, the storefront, a slice of the parking lot. At 12:14 a.m., her truck pulls in. She steps out. Alone. Movements normal.
Calm.
She fills the tank, walks inside, pays in cash. No conversation. No hesitation. But then, at 12:17 a.m., something changes. A second vehicle enters the frame.
Dark.
Low profile. Headlights dimmed as it rolls in. It doesn't pull up to a pump. Doesn't park near the entrance. It stops just outside the camera's main angle, where only the front corner is visible. Enough to know it's there. Not enough to identify it. The driver doesn't get out. She exits the store seconds later. And for a brief moment, just one, the footage captures her looking toward that vehicle. Not startled. Not alarmed. But aware. As if she recognizes something. Or someone. Then the frame skips. static, distortion, a glitch that wipes out 8 seconds of footage. When the image returns, her truck is already pulling away. The second vehicle follows. Same direction, same road. The investigators watch that sequence again and again, slowing it down, isolating frames, enhancing shadows. But the result never changes. The most critical moment gone. 8 seconds. That's all it takes. The gas station clerk remembers her. Of course he does. Everyone does now. But his memory is clean. Too clean. He says she seemed normal, polite, quiet, paid in exact change, left without saying anything unusual. When asked about the second vehicle, he hesitates, then shrugs, says he didn't notice. But hesitation is everything in a case like this. They dig into him. Background check. Financials. Connections. Nothing jumps out. No criminal record. No obvious link to her. Just a man working the night shift, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or the perfect place at the perfect time. The footage becomes the centerpiece of the investigation. A shadow vehicle. An unidentified driver. 8 missing seconds. They issue a public request. Anyone who was on that road that night, anyone who saw anything unusual, calls flood in. Most are useless. Some are impossible to verify. But a few stand out. A truck driver claims he saw 2 vehicles speeding down the highway around 12:30 a.m. One matching her truck, the other dark, following too closely. He remembers it because it felt wrong, aggressive, intentional. Another caller reports hearing tires on gravel near the dirt road, where her truck was later found. Around the same time, says it sounded like 2 vehicles, not one. The pieces begin to align, but not enough to form a clear picture. Back at the truck, forensic teams go deeper. They strip it down, seats removed, panels lifted, every surface tested. And that's when they find it. A fiber, caught beneath the passenger seat. Not from the vehicle, not from her clothing. Synthetic, dark, almost invisible against the fabric. It doesn't belong. They bag it, catalog it, send it for analysis. Results come back inconclusive. Common material, widely manufactured, could be from anything: car upholstery, clothing, industrial fabric. It points everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But it confirms one thing. She wasn't alone in that truck. The passenger door tells a similar story. A partial print, smudged, pressed at an angle that suggests someone opened it from the outside, or leaned in, or forced their way inside without leaving a clear mark. It doesn't match hers. It doesn't match anyone in the immediate circle. And it doesn't match anything in the system. The case tightens. Investigators begin to believe they're dealing with someone careful. Someone who understands how to move without leaving behind the kind of evidence that leads to an arrest. Not luck. Not chance. Control. They revisit the boyfriend again. Pressure increases. Interviews stretch longer. Questions sharpen. They present the new timeline. The gas station. The second vehicle. The possibility that she met someone willingly or was followed. His reaction is immediate. Shock. Confusion. Denial. He insists he knows nothing about another vehicle. Nothing about her stopping for gas. Nothing beyond what he's already told them. His story holds, but cracks begin to form under pressure. Small inconsistencies. Shifts in wording. Changes in tone. Not enough. Never enough. They bring in friends, coworkers, anyone who might have known if she had plans that night. A secret meeting. A hidden relationship. Something that could explain why she didn't go straight home. One coworker hesitates. Says she mentioned something earlier that week. Not directly. Not clearly. Just a passing comment about finally handling something she'd been putting off. When asked what that meant, the coworker shrugs. Could be anything. Could be everything. The investigation branches again. Financial records, phone logs, letters, journals. They comb through her life looking for anything out of place. And then they find it. A number. Written on a scrap of paper in her room. No name. Just 10 digits. No area code written, but local. They trace it. Prepaid. Unregistered. Disposable. They pull call records anyway. There are only 3 calls. All within the same week she disappeared. Each one lasting less than a minute. The last call made the night she vanished. At 11:58 p.m. Just minutes after she left the diner. The timing hits like a shockwave. Whoever that number belongs to was the last person she contacted. They try to trace it further. Dead end. The number was activated weeks before. Used briefly. Then deactivated the day after she disappeared. No billing information. No subscriber data. Just a ghost in the system. The kind of tool someone uses when they don't want to be found. The theory shifts again. This wasn't spontaneous. This was arranged. A meeting. A setup. But for what? And by who? The pressure builds. Media picks up the story again. Headlines grow sharper. Cold case in the making. Mysterious disappearance shocks Texas town. The community feels it. Every article, every broadcast, a reminder that the truth is still out there and getting further away with every passing day. Investigators push harder. They map out every possible route between the gas station and the dirt road. Every turn, every intersection, looking for cameras, witnesses, anything that might have captured those missing 8 seconds from another angle. Most of the area is blind. No cameras.
No lights.
Just darkness. But one location stands out. An abandoned way station, miles down the highway. It hasn't been in use for years, but a maintenance camera was installed long ago. No one is sure if it still works. They check. Miraculously, it does. The footage is worse than the gas station. Blurred. Low frame rate. But it shows the road. At 12:29 a.m., 2 vehicles pass through the frame. One, her truck. The other, still that same dark shape, trailing behind.
Closer now.
Too close. The gap between them is barely a car length. And then, just as quickly as they appear, they're gone. The road ahead leads to the dirt path where her truck was found, which means whatever happened after that point. In the dark. Out of sight. And perfectly executed. Because from that moment on, the second vehicle disappears completely. No further sightings. No additional footage. Nothing. It's as if it never existed at all. But investigators know better. They've seen enough to understand one thing. Someone followed her. Someone stayed close. Someone waited for the exact moment when the road turned empty and the world stopped watching. And when that moment came, they made their move. The question isn't whether she was taken. The question is how someone managed to do it so cleanly, so completely, that not even time could expose them. Not yet. Because buried in the evidence, in the fibers and the prints and the ghost of a phone call, the truth is still there. Waiting. For someone or something to finally connect the pieces that refuse to fit. And when they do, the silence that's protected this case for so long will shatter. But in 1998, that silence still holds.
Tight.
Unbreakable. Hiding everything. The deeper they dig, the more the case resists them. By late summer, the investigation has consumed everything. Time, resources, patience. Detectives stop going home at regular hours. Coffee turns cold on desks buried under reports. Maps of the county line the walls, marked with pins and strings that try, desperately, to impose logic on something that refuses to make sense. But then something shifts again. It begins with the land. A rancher, miles from the original search zone, calls it in. Says something doesn't look right along the edge of his property. Not obvious. Not dramatic. Just disturbed. A section of earth that feels recently touched in a place no one has reason to touch. Investigators arrive within the hour. The sun is low, casting long shadows across the dry field. The air is still, heavy, as if even the wind is waiting to see what they find. The rancher stands back, arms crossed, watching. He doesn't say much. Doesn't need to. They see it. A shallow depression. Not large. Not deep. But wrong. The soil is slightly darker. Looser. As if it was turned, then forced back into place in a hurry.
No markers.
No obvious signs of digging equipment. Just subtle disruption, easy to miss unless you know exactly what untouched land is supposed to look like. They secure the area. Forensics moves in. Every motion is careful, controlled. Photographs taken from every angle. Measurements recorded. The ground is peeled back slowly, layer by layer, like they're afraid the truth might vanish if they move too fast. And then, fabric. Not much. Just a fragment.
Torn.
Faded, but unmistakably human. The tension snaps. They widen the dig. More fragments appear.
Threads.
Small pieces of clothing that match what she was last seen wearing. The confirmation hits before anyone says it out loud. They've found her. Or what's left. The scene changes instantly. What was once a missing person case becomes something else entirely. Something heavier. Something irreversible. The word spreads faster this time. Not just missing, not just gone, but found. And not alive. The town feels it like a shockwave. People stop pretending she might still walk through the door. The porch light that burned every night now flickers with a different meaning. Not hope.
Grief.
But for investigators, this isn't closure. It's escalation. Because now, finally, they have a crime scene. The remains are incomplete.
Scattered.
Deliberately so. Whoever placed them here didn't just hide a body, they tried to erase it. Pieces separated. Buried shallow. Exposed just enough that time and nature would do the rest. It wasn't panic. It was method. Forensic teams work through the night. Every inch of soil is sifted. Every fragment collected. The process is slow, painstaking, almost ritualistic. Because this is where the answers should be. And yet, even here the silence persists. No weapon. No clear cause of death. Just damage.
Time.
Decomposition that has taken more than it left behind. But something else emerges. A pattern. The positioning of the remains suggests movement. Not a single burial, but multiple placements. As if the body was transported, then redistributed. Not randomly, but with intent. With purpose. Investigators begin to consider a chilling possibility. The killer didn't just want to hide the crime. They wanted to control how it would be discovered. Back at the lab, analysis begins. Bone fragments are examined. Tissue samples tested. Every piece of evidence pushed through the limits of what 1998 technology can handle. Results come back slowly, each one adding detail, but not clarity. Time of death is narrowed down. Within hours of her disappearance. Which means everything happened fast. Too fast. There was no prolonged captivity. No extended window. Whatever occurred on that road ended quickly. And violently. The focus shifts back to the timeline. Gas station. 2 vehicles. The dirt road. And now, this location. A path begins to form. But it's incomplete. There are still gaps. Still moments where the story dissolves into nothing. And in those gaps the killer lives. Investigators return to the scene where the truck was found. This time they see it differently. Not as a point of disappearance, but as the beginning of the crime. They re-examine everything. Angles. Distances. Sight lines. And that's when someone notices it. A subtle indentation in the dirt, partially preserved beneath layers of dust that settled after the initial search. Not tire tracks. Something narrower. Parallel lines. Faint, but consistent. Drag marks. The realization lands heavy. She didn't leave that road on her own. They follow the marks as far as they can. They lead away from the truck, toward a section of brush that had already been searched once before. But now, with new context, new purpose, they look closer. And they find it. A secondary site. Not a burial. Not a final location. But a place where something happened. The ground is disturbed. Broken branches. Compressed soil. Subtle, but undeniable. This is where the struggle occurred. Or, at least where it ended. Forensic teams collect everything they can. And finally, something new surfaces.
Blood.
Not much. Just traces. Absorbed into the earth. But enough. They test it. It's hers. The confirmation changes everything. This is where she died. Not at the burial site. Not somewhere far away. Right here. within walking distance of where her truck was abandoned, which means the killer didn't take her far. They didn't need to, because they knew the area, knew it well enough to move through it in darkness, to choose locations that wouldn't be seen, wouldn't be questioned, wouldn't be found, unless someone knew exactly where to look. The profile sharpens. Local, or someone who's spent enough time here to become invisible. They revisit every person connected to the area. Landowners, workers, hunters, anyone with access, anyone familiar with the terrain. The list grows, and with it, the pressure. Interviews become interrogations. Politeness fades. Urgency replaces it. Detectives push harder, ask sharper questions, look for reactions instead of answers. Most people cooperate. Some get defensive. A few get nervous. But nervous doesn't mean guilty. Not here. Not in a case like this. Because everyone is nervous now. The media intensifies coverage. Body discovered in cold case. Texas town shaken again. Cameras return.
Reporters day.
The story evolves from mystery to tragedy, and then to something darker. Because now there's no doubt. This was murder. Planned. Executed. Hidden. And still unsolved. Back in the evidence room, the pieces begin to connect. The fiber from the truck. The partial fingerprint. The prepaid phone. The shadow vehicle. Each one a fragment of a larger truth that refuses to fully reveal itself. Investigators build scenarios. One stands out. She stops at the gas station, makes the call, meets someone, or is followed by someone who knows she'll be alone. They drive. The second vehicle stays close. Close enough to act. Close enough to control. They reach the dirt road. Something happens.
Fast.
Violent. Decisive. She's removed from the truck.
Dragged.
Taken to the secondary site.
Killed.
Then moved again. Disassembled.
Buried. Erased. It fits.
But it doesn't identify the killer. And without that, it's just another theory. Time keeps moving. But the case doesn't. It stalls. Even with a body. Even with evidence. Even with everything they've found. Because none of it points clearly to one person. Just possibilities. And possibilities don't lead to arrests. They lead to frustration. To exhaustion. To that creeping, inevitable word that no investigator wants to say out loud.
Cold.
But not yet. Not while there are still leads to chase. Not while there are still names on the board. Not while the memory of that night still burns fresh in the minds of those who refuse to let it fade. Because somewhere in all of this, in the soil, in the fibers, in the 8 missing seconds of footage, the truth is still there. Hidden. Waiting. And the person who buried it is counting on it staying that way. Forever. The case doesn't slow down, it fractures. With a body recovered and a confirmed murder scene, the illusion of randomness disappears. What remains is something colder, sharper, more deliberate. And for the first time, investigators stop asking what happened and start asking who knew exactly how to do it. Because this wasn't chaos. This was control. The land didn't just hide the crime. It was used as part of it. The realization pushes the investigation in a new direction. Geography becomes evidence. Distances are measured. Timelines recalculated. Every mile between the gas station, the dirt road, the secondary site, and the burial location is mapped with obsessive precision. And one pattern begins to emerge. Every location falls within a tight, almost perfect radius. Not random, not scattered. Centered. Whoever did this wasn't just familiar with the area. They operated within it. Moved through it like it belonged to them. Knew where to stop. Where to turn. Where no one would look. A comfort zone. And that narrows things. Significantly. Investigators begin compiling a list. Property owners. Frequent visitors. Hunters, ranch hands, utility workers. Anyone with a reason to be out there after dark without raising suspicion. Anyone who could move freely between those points without being noticed. Dozens of names. Then hundreds. The list grows too large, too quickly. So they refine it. Who was active in that area during that time? who had access to vehicles matching the shadow profile seen on the gas station footage, who had connections, however small, to the victim. That last question becomes critical, because despite everything pointing to control and planning, there's still one detail that doesn't fit. She looked at the car, at the gas station, not in fear, but in recognition. That moment, captured in grainy footage and missing 8 seconds of clarity, becomes the center of everything, because it suggests something investigators can't ignore. She may have known her killer. The focus shifts inward. Friends are re-interviewed, co-workers questioned again, family connections re-examined under a harsher light. Old statements are compared against new ones, looking for inconsistencies, contradictions, anything that might have been overlooked the first time. And then a name resurfaces. Not new, but different now. A man who had been interviewed early on, briefly, dismissed quickly. At the time, he didn't stand out. Just another local. Just another face in a town full of them. But now, with the new geographic profile, he fits
too well.
He owns land, not far from the secondary site. Close enough to move between locations in minutes. Close enough to know exactly where to go and where not to. He also owns a vehicle.
Dark. Low.
Registered months before the disappearance. The same general shape as the one seen in the gas station footage. It's not enough, but it's something. They bring him in again. This time, the tone is different. Less casual. More direct. He sits across from them, calm.
Too calm.
Answers questions without hesitation. Doesn't ask why he's there. Doesn't seem surprised. Just prepared. He says he didn't know her well. Knew of her. Small town. Everyone does. Says he was home that night. Alone.
No witnesses.
The same answer they've heard before. But now it lands differently. They press him. Ask about his movements. His vehicle. His routine. His access to the land. Every question met with the same steady composure. No cracks. No slips. Just a man who seems to understand exactly how much to say and how much to hold back. They check his story.
No alibi.
No confirmation. But no direct contradiction either. It places him in the same category as before. Interesting, but not enough. Still, something about him lingers. A detail that doesn't quite sit right. They dig deeper. Background checks turn up minor incidents. Nothing violent. Nothing that would flag him as dangerous.
Just small things.
Complaints.
Disputes.
The kind of behavior that gets written off as personality, not pattern. But patterns don't always start big. Sometimes they build quietly. They look into his connections. And that's when they find it. A link.
Thin.
Indirect. But real. He had been to the diner. Not often. But enough. Enough that someone might recognize his face. Enough that he could have recognized hers. The possibility shifts again. This wasn't personal in the traditional sense. No known relationship. No history. But familiarity. Enough to lower her guard. Enough to make her look at that car and not run. Investigators return to the prepaid phone. 3 calls. All short. All within the same week. They run voice analysis on the recorded fragments they managed to recover, static-filled, nearly unusable. But even in that distortion, something stands out. A tone. A cadence.
Male.
Measured. Controlled. They compare it to the man they've just re-interviewed. It's not a match, but it's not a mismatch either. The technology isn't precise enough.
Not yet.
Frustration builds. Because everything is pointing in one direction, but nothing is strong enough to hold. They search his property.
Carefully.
Legally. Thoroughly. Fields. Structures. Vehicles. Nothing obvious. No physical evidence tying him directly to the crime. No blood. No fibers. No trace of her. Just land. Endless, quiet land. But even that tells a story. Because he knows it. Every inch. Every path. Every place where something could happen unseen. The investigation tightens around him, but never closes.
And he knows it.
You can see it in the way he moves. The way he answers questions. The way he watches them watch him. He's not nervous. He's aware. There's a difference. Meanwhile, the case begins to wear down those chasing it. Months have passed. The urgency that once fueled every lead starts to fade under the weight of repetition. The same questions, the same answers, the same dead ends. But the evidence doesn't disappear. It just waits. Back in the lab, the partial fingerprint is revisited. New techniques are applied. Enhanced imaging, digital reconstruction. They try to pull more from it than it was ever meant to give. For a moment, it looks promising. Additional ridge detail becomes visible. Not enough for a full match, but enough to refine the profile. They run it again through the system. Still nothing. Because whoever left it still isn't in the database. But that doesn't mean they won't be. Not someday. Not when the system grows. Not when the world catches up to what was left behind. And that thought lingers. Because this case, unlike others, doesn't feel finished. It feels paused. As if everything needed to solve it already exists, just waiting for the right moment to come together. Back in the town, life continues, but differently. The story has changed people. Trust erodes. Familiar faces are no longer safe by default. Because the idea that the killer might be someone local, someone who walks the same streets, shops in the same stores, passes by unnoticed every day, that idea doesn't fade. It grows. And it changes everything. The man remains under quiet scrutiny. Never charged. Never cleared. Just there. A presence. A possibility. And as the investigation stretches into another year, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. They're close. Closer than they've ever been. But still, not close enough. Because in a case built on control, precision, and silence, the smallest missing piece can keep the entire truth buried. And the person who put it there is counting on that. Every single day. Time doesn't heal this case, it distorts it. By the second year, the investigation begins to change shape. Not outwardly. On paper, it still moves. Leads are logged. Interviews conducted. Evidence reviewed. But beneath the surface, something shifts. The urgency that once drove every decision starts to dull, replaced by a slower, more methodical rhythm. Because now, it's no longer about reacting. It's about waiting. And waiting is where cases like this begin to slip. The man they've been watching, still there. Still within reach. Still answering questions with the same measured calm. He hasn't left town. Hasn't changed routines. If anything, he's become more visible. More present. As if daring them to find something, anything, that can tie him to what happened that night. But they can't. Not directly. And without that, everything stalls. So they widen the net. Again. Investigators begin revisiting cases from neighboring counties. Unsolved assaults. Missing persons. Incidents that didn't quite fit at the time. They look for patterns. Similar methods. Similar geography. Anything that might suggest this wasn't an isolated act. Most cases don't match. Different circumstances. Different victims. Different timelines. But one file stands out. A report from 3 years earlier. Not a murder. An attempted abduction. Same region. Same type of road. Late at night. The victim survived.
Barely.
She described a vehicle, dark.
Low.
No clear markings. The driver never fully exited the car. Just opened the passenger door. Called out. Calm voice. Familiar tone. Like someone trying not to alarm her. She didn't approach. Something about it felt wrong. And when she hesitated, the man drove off. At the time, it was written off as a close call. A near miss. No follow-up. No suspect identified.
But now,
it feels different. They bring her in again. Years later, memory is fragile. Details blur. But some things don't fade. She remembers the voice. Not the words, just the way it sounded. Controlled. Almost rehearsed. As if he had done this before or planned to. They ask her to listen to voice samples. Dozens of them. Including the man they've been watching. She listens carefully. Long pauses between each clip. Then she shakes her head. No match. But she hesitates. Says one thing before leaving. It's close. Not confirmation, but not dismissal either. And in a case like this, close is enough to keep a door open. They return to the land again. Not just the known locations, but everything surrounding them, expanding outward, looking for anything that might have been missed, anything buried deeper, anything placed where no one thought to look. Ground-penetrating radar is brought in. New technology, limited but promising. They scan fields, empty stretches of land, places where something could be hidden for years without being noticed. The results are inconsistent. False positives, natural formations, old debris. But one scan triggers attention. A small anomaly, not large enough to be obvious, not deep enough to be dismissed.
They dig, carefully, slowly.
Expectations are low, but hope isn't gone. And then, metal, not a weapon, not evidence in the traditional sense. A box, rusting, weather-worn, buried just deep enough to avoid detection. They open it. Inside, nothing that makes immediate sense. Old receipts, scraps of paper, a torn photograph, and something else.
Gloves, dark,
Synthetic, worn but preserved by the soil. The air shifts. Because this doesn't belong. Not naturally.
not randomly.
This was placed here.
Hidden.
The contents are bagged, cataloged, rushed to the lab. Analysis begins. The gloves, mass-produced. No unique identifiers, but inside traces. Skin cells. Degraded, but present. DNA.
It's weak.
Fragmented. Not enough for a full profile, but enough to confirm one thing. It doesn't belong to her. Which means, whoever wore those gloves left something behind. The box becomes a focal point. Why bury it? Why keep these items? And why here? The location matters. It sits just outside the established radius of the known crime sites. Close but not inside. A boundary. As if whoever placed it there needed distance, but not too much. Investigators begin to see a pattern not just in location but in behavior. This wasn't just about committing the crime.
It was about managing it,
controlling what remained, deciding what would be found and what wouldn't. The gloves suggest planning, preparation, an understanding of how to avoid leaving evidence. But the fact that they were buried suggests something else.
a mistake.
Or a precaution that came too late. They test the DNA again. Push the limits of what's possible. Try to build something usable from fragments that were never meant to last. The results come back the same. Incomplete. Unusable.
For now.
But not forever. Because technology doesn't stand still. And that thought begins to echo through the investigation. This case isn't over. It's ahead of its time. The man remains in the background. Always there. Always just out of reach. They bring him in again. This time, they mention the box. The gloves. Watch his reaction. He doesn't flinch. Doesn't react at all. Just listens. Then denies.
Calm.
Steady.
Unchanged.
If he's involved, he's practiced. If he's not, he's unshakable. Either way, it doesn't break. And that's the problem. Because everything in this case points toward control. And he fits that profile perfectly. But fitting isn't proving. And without proof, there's nothing they can do. The investigation begins to thin. Resources shift. New cases emerge. Old ones like this start to settle into a different category. Not forgotten, but no longer active in the same way. Files are reorganized. Evidence boxed. The label changes.
Cold.
The word lands heavy. Because it doesn't mean the case is over. It means it's waiting. Waiting for something new. Something unexpected. Something that didn't exist before. Years pass. The town grows. Changes. People leave. New ones arrive. The story becomes something told, not something lived. But it never fully disappears. It lingers. In memory. In rumor. In the quiet understanding that somewhere out there the truth still exists. And so does the person who knows it. The evidence remains. The fingerprint. The fiber. The degraded DNA from a pair of buried gloves. Fragments of a puzzle that no one has been able to complete.
Yet.
Because time changes everything. Technology evolves. Databases expand. What was once invisible becomes visible. What was once unusable becomes critical. And somewhere in a future no one in 1998 can see, this case is waiting. Not to fade. Not to be forgotten. But to be reopened. And when it is, every piece left behind, every trace, every mistake, every calculated move, will finally begin to speak. And when they do, the silence that protected this crime for so long won't hold. Not anymore. Years don't pass in this case, they accumulate. Dust settles on evidence boxes, but it never truly covers them. Files are moved, archived, transferred from one shelf to another, but every label still carries the same weight. Same name, same date, same unanswered question that refuses to weaken with time.
Cold case.
The term sounds final. It isn't. It's a pause. And somewhere in the early 2000s, that pause begins to shift. Not because of a confession, not because of a witness suddenly remembering something they forgot, but because the world changes. Quietly at first, then completely. DNA technology evolves. What once required a full, clean sample now works with fragments, with traces, with the kind of evidence that used to be dismissed as unusable. Databases expand. Systems connect. Information that once lived in isolation now begins to overlap, intersect, communicate. And suddenly, cases like this aren't as silent as they used to be. The evidence is pulled back out. Boxes opened. Seals broken. The same items that sat untouched for years are placed under new lights, new lenses, new possibilities. The gloves from the buried box. Re-examined. Swabbed again. This time, with techniques that didn't exist when they were first tested, the degraded DNA, once useless, begins to respond. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to build something. A partial profile. Incomplete, but structured. A genetic shadow. They run it through the system. No match. But this time that doesn't mean the same thing it used to. Because now there are other ways. New approaches. New methods that don't rely on direct matches, but on connections. Family. Ancestry. Shared markers that can point towards someone even if that person has never been entered into a database. It's experimental. Controversial. But it works. Sometimes. They submit the profile. And then, they wait. Weeks pass. Then months. The case, once again, sits in that familiar space between hope and silence. Until one day, a response comes back. Not a name. Not yet. But a direction. A cluster of genetic markers that align with a specific family line. Distant relatives. People who share fragments of the same DNA. Not suspects, but signposts. The investigation reopens. Officially. Quietly. Detectives, new ones now, younger, but just as determined, pick up the file. They read everything. Every report. Every interview. Every dead end. They learn the case not as history, but as something alive again. And they follow the genetics. Family trees are built. Branches extended. Connections mapped. It's slow. Meticulous. Because one wrong assumption leads everything in the wrong direction. But eventually, a name surfaces. Not at the center, but close. A relative. Someone who shares enough DNA to matter, but not enough to be the source. They trace outward. Expand the tree. Look for males. Look for age. Look for location. Who lived in that area in 1998?
Who had access to that land?
Who fits the profile built years ago, before any of this technology existed? The list narrows. Rapidly. Until there's only one name left that checks every box. The same man. The one they questioned. The one they watched. The one they could never prove anything against.
He's older now.
Time has moved on for him. Or at least it looks like it has.
Same town.
Same land. Same routines. A life built carefully. Quietly. Almost as if nothing ever happened. But the past doesn't disappear. Not when it's written in DNA. They don't arrest him. Not yet. Because partial profiles aren't enough. Family connections aren't enough. They need something direct, something undeniable.
So they watch.
Again. But this time it's different. Because now they know where to look. They track his movements, his habits, wait for an opportunity. Something discarded, something abandoned, something that carries his DNA. A cup, a cigarette, anything. Days pass, then weeks, and then it happens.
A simple moment.
He throws something away. They collect it.
Carefully.
Quietly.
Send it to the lab.
And this time, there's no degradation, no missing pieces, no uncertainty. A full profile. They compare it to the gloves, to the partial fingerprint, to everything that has been waiting for this moment. And when the results come back, the silence that held this case together for so long
breaks. Match.
Not partial, not probable,
exact.
The gloves, the buried evidence, all of it leads to him. The confirmation hits like a shockwave through the department.
Decades of waiting,
of uncertainty, of not knowing, and suddenly, they do. But knowing isn't the same as proving. Not in court, not in a case this old. They build it carefully.
Piece by piece. Timeline.
Evidence. Behavior. Everything aligned. Everything reinforced. Because this isn't just about solving the case. It's about making it hold. After all these years, it has to hold. They bring him in. One more time. But this time it's not a conversation. It's an ending. He sits in the same room. Same posture. Same calm expression. But something has changed. Because this time, they don't ask. They tell. They lay it out. The DNA. The evidence. The connection he thought would never be made. For the first time, he reacts. Not dramatically. Not visibly. But there's a shift. A crack. Small. But real. And in a case built on control, even the smallest crack is enough. Because the silence that protected him is gone. And everything he buried is coming back.
Piece by piece.
Trace by trace. Until there's nothing left to hide behind. Not anymore. The arrest doesn't come with sirens. It comes quietly. Early morning. The kind of hour where the world hasn't fully woken up yet, where routines are predictable, where people step outside expecting nothing more than another ordinary day. That's when they move in. No spectacle. No warning. Just a knock on the door that carries decades of weight behind it. He opens it. And for a moment, just a moment, time folds back on itself. The same man. Older now. Lines etched deeper into his face. Hair thinner. Movements slower. But the same eyes. The same controlled stillness that investigators remember from years ago. They say his name. He doesn't ask why. Because somewhere, deep down, he already knows. The warrant is read. The charges follow. Murder.
Kidnapping.
Tampering with evidence. Words that have waited years to be spoken out loud in his presence. He doesn't resist.
Doesn't argue.
Just stands there as everything he built, every routine, every normal day layered over what happened in 1998, begins to collapse in silence. The neighbors watch. From windows. From doorways. Confusion spreads first. Then disbelief. Because this is someone they've seen. Passed by. Spoken to. A man who existed in plain sight for decades without raising suspicions strong enough to stop him. And now, he's being taken away. The news breaks fast. Faster than it ever did back then. 1998 Texas cold case solved. DNA breakthrough leads to arrest. Headlines flash across screens, across phones, across a town that thought this story would never have an ending. But this isn't an ending. It's an opening. Because now, finally, the questions shift. Not what happened.
But why? And how?
Inside the interrogation room, nothing feels rushed. No urgency. No pressure. Because they don't need it anymore. They have the evidence. They have the DNA. They have the timeline that's been rebuilt stronger than ever before. Now they want the truth. He sits across from them. Hands folded. Expression neutral. The same posture he had years ago. But this time, there's nowhere left to go. They begin. Not with accusations. With facts. The gas station footage. The second vehicle. The prepaid phone. The buried gloves. The DNA match. Each piece laid out, one after another, until the structure of the case surrounds him completely. No gaps. No exits. Just the truth closing in. For a long time, he says nothing. Just listens. Eyes fixed. Breathing steady. As if silence might still protect him. But silence doesn't work anymore. Because silence is what kept him free. And now, it's what condemns him.
They ask him about that night.
1998. The road. The truck. The moment everything changed. He exhales.
Slowly.
And for the first time,
he speaks.
Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to be heard. And what he says doesn't match the monster they expected. No rage. No chaos. No loss of control. He describes it like a plan.
He saw her before that night.
At the diner. More than once. Watched her. Learned her routine. Not because of who she was, but because of what she represented. Opportunity. Someone predictable. Someone alone. The prepaid phone wasn't random. It was deliberate. A way to create contact without connection. He called her. Briefly. Just enough to arrange something. A reason to stop. A reason to meet. At the gas station. That's why she looked at the car. Because she was expecting someone. Not danger. Not violence. Just a meeting. Something simple. Something normal. That's what made it possible. He followed her.
Close.
Controlled. Waiting for the right place. The right moment. The dirt road wasn't chosen by chance. He knew it. Knew how empty it would be. Knew no one would pass through at that hour. When she stopped, he acted.
Fast.
Exactly as the timeline suggested. No hesitation. No noise. Everything contained. Everything controlled. He admits to the struggle.
Short.
Violent. But brief. Over before it could become something unpredictable. Then the movement. The dragging. The secondary sight. Every detail aligns with what investigators found, but hearing it changes everything. Because now, it's not theory. It's real. He explains the dismemberment the same way. Not emotionally. Not defensively. But functionally. As if it was simply part of the process. A way to reduce risk. A way to manage what couldn't be hidden otherwise. The burial sites. The distribution. The gloves. All of it planned. All of it executed with the same level of precision. And the box? The buried items? He pauses there. For the first time, hesitation. Because that part wasn't supposed to be found. He says he kept things. Not as trophies. Not for memory. But as control. A way to hold onto the part of the crime that no one else could see. A secret within a secret. And when he felt the risk grow, he buried it. Believing that would be enough. Believing that time would take care of the rest. And for years,
it did.
Until it didn't. The room goes quiet again. But this silence is different. Not protective. Not hiding anything. Just the weight of everything that's been said settling into place. Investigators don't react. They don't need to. Because the confession, combined with the evidence, closes the loop. Every question that lingered for decades now has an answer. Every gap in the timeline filled. Every theory confirmed or corrected. But the most unsettling part is how ordinary it sounds. No grand motive. No explosive trigger. Just calculation. Just opportunity. Just a man who decided at some point that he could do this. And get away with it. And for a long time,
he did.
Until the world changed. Until science caught up. Until the smallest traces he left behind became louder than everything he tried to hide. As they lead him out of the room, there's no resistance. No final statement. No attempt to rewrite the story. Because there's nothing left to control. Not anymore. The case that once lived in silence now speaks in full.
Clear.
undeniable, and impossible to ignore. But even with the confession, even with the arrest, something lingers. Because solving a case doesn't erase it. It just reveals it. And what this case reveals is something far more unsettling than the mystery ever was. That for years, decades, the truth was always there, buried, waiting, and all it took was time catching up. The interrogation room no longer feels like a place where answers are extracted. It feels like a place where history is finally forced to breathe. The man sits under fluorescent light that hums softly, almost indifferent to the weight of what is being spoken. Outside these walls, the world has already decided what he is. Inside, the investigators still need to understand how that truth was constructed piece by piece, night by night, decision by decision. He is not loud, not defensive, not theatrical. That is what unsettles the room most. Because nothing about him resembles the image people expect when they hear the word killer. There is no chaos in his posture, no visible collapse. Only structure, only restraint. As if even now, after everything has been uncovered, he is still organizing the narrative in his own mind. They ask him again about the gas station. He repeats it with precision. He saw her there. He made sure she noticed him. Not fear, not urgency, recognition. That was the key. He understood that in a small town, familiarity is more powerful than threat. People don't run from what they think they understand. They pause. They hesitate. And hesitation is everything. The prepaid phone wasn't an accident of convenience. It was the first layer of distance. A voice without identity. A connection without trace. He used it sparingly, carefully, never long enough to create a pattern, just enough to create expectation. That expectation became the trap. When she answered that final call at 11:58 p.m., she was already inside a structure she could not see. A structure built entirely from timing, repetition, and predictability. He doesn't describe emotion. He doesn't describe anger. He describes sequence. The diner, the routine, the clock-out time, the predictable walk to the vehicle. Every step calculated not in the moment, but long before it ever happened. And when they ask why her, there is a long pause. The first real silence that feels uncertain rather than controlled. He says something simple. Because she was consistent. That sentence lands heavier than anything else he has said. Consistent means predictable, accessible, trackable. In his logic, consistency is vulnerability. And vulnerability is permission. The investigators don't interrupt. They let the silence expand because it reveals more than words ever could. Outside, the case has already begun to shift from investigation to reconstruction. Inside, it is still unfolding in real time, layer by layer, like something being pulled back from burial after too many years underground. He continues. The night itself was not improvised. That is important. There was no moment of sudden transformation, no break from reality, no psychological rupture that explains everything away. Instead, there was execution. A sequence followed without deviation. Follow, isolate, redirect, control. The gas station stop was not accidental on her part and not random on his. It was the hinge. The moment both paths intersected exactly as planned. When she looked toward his vehicle, it was not fear because fear requires uncertainty. What she felt, he insists, was recognition. A false familiarity constructed by prior observation, by repetition she did not realize she had been subjected to. And then the road. The dirt stretch outside town that investigators have mapped 100 times now. He describes it not as a place of violence, but as a place of certainty. No witnesses. No interruptions. No variables. Just geometry. They ask him about the moment everything changed from plan to act. He corrects them. There was no change. That is the part that disturbs the room most deeply. Because in his mind, there is no distinction between intention and action. Only continuation. The struggle, when described, is brief. Almost mechanical. He does not embellish it. Does not extend it. It is not a story of rage. It is a problem solved in motion. The transition from control over situation to control over outcome. And when it ends, there is no emotional resolution, only logistical consideration.
Distance.
Isolation. Removal. The second site was not chosen in panic. It was chosen earlier than the investigators ever realized. That realization lands like a second wave in the room, because it means that even the disposal was not reactive. It was pre-imagined. He does not call it concealment. He calls it reduction. As if the victim was transformed from person to problem, and the landscape was simply the tool used to resolve it. Outside, the investigation teams are no longer just listening for confession. They are comparing it against everything they already know. Every detail he offers is checked against physical evidence, and the horrifying consistency builds a structure no one can ignore. He knows the terrain. He knows the distances. He knows the limitations of visibility at night in that specific rural stretch. He knows exactly where cameras did not exist in 1998. He knows where the land bends, where sound dissipates, where headlights disappear into nothing. That knowledge is not guessed. It is lived. They ask him directly whether this was his first time operating like this. For the first time, his expression shifts, not into anger, not into denial, but into something closer to discomfort with the question itself. He says nothing at first. Then he answers carefully. There were no others, but there were thoughts, planning, scenarios, considerations that never required action until that night aligned with them perfectly. That is the difference, he says. Opportunity does not create intent. It reveals it. The room goes colder after that sentence, not because of what it implies legally, but because of what it implies structurally. It reframes everything, not as a moment of collapse, but as a moment of alignment between thought and environment. They move to the evidence. The gloves, the buried box, the partial fingerprint, the fiber, the phone. Each item laid out again, now with his presence attached to it not as theory, but as confirmation. He listens without interruption. When they mention the buried items, there is a pause longer than before. The only hesitation that feels like memory rather than strategy. He says he kept them longer than intended, not for nostalgia, not for sentiment, but because they represented continuity, a record of control, a private archive of something that, in his mind, remained contained as long as it remained hidden. The investigators note it differently. Obsession, ownership, reinforcement, but they do not argue. There is no need. The structure of the case no longer requires persuasion. It only requires completion. And that completion begins when science catches up to time. They explain it to him, not as threat, but as fact. DNA has changed. Databases have expanded. What once could not be read is now readable. What once was invisible is now traceable across generations. For the first time, his composure fractures in a way that is not visible in movement, but in stillness. Because that is the one variable he never controlled.
Time.
Not time as passage, but time as expansion of capability. The interrogation does not end dramatically. There is no final outburst. No confession rewritten in emotional collapse. It ends the way everything in this case seems to end. With confirmation. With alignment. With silence that finally belongs to the truth rather than to concealment. When he is removed from the room, the hallway feels different. Not because anything has physically changed, but because something abstract has been removed from it. A presence that once moved freely within the world, without recognition, is now contained. But containment is not closure. Outside, reporters are already building the narrative.
Cold case solved.
DNA breakthrough. Community relief. Justice finally served after decades of uncertainty. Those phrases begin to circulate immediately, shaping how the story will be remembered. But inside the department, no one is speaking about justice. They are speaking about time, about how long it took for the truth to become visible, about how many systems had to evolve before one moment in 1998 could finally be understood, and about how many similar cases might still be waiting in silence, just like this one once was. The final image that stays with them is not the confession. It is the evidence room. The box that once sat forgotten. The gloves that should have meant nothing. the fingerprint that was too incomplete to matter, the phone record that seemed disposable. Each piece, once insignificant alone, now forming a complete structure only when time allows them to be seen together. The case did not change. The world did. And because of that, a night that once ended in silence has finally been reconstructed in full. Not softened, not simplified, but exposed exactly as it was. And somewhere in that realization lies the most unsettling truth of all. Nothing about it was hidden perfectly. It was only hidden temporarily, until the world learned how to look properly. The courtroom is not loud. It never needs to be, not in a case like this. Every seat is filled, but the air feels hollow, stretched thin by the weight of what is about to be finalized. The man sits at the defense table with the same controlled stillness he has carried through every stage of the investigation. No handcuffs visible to the public eye. No visible struggle. Just presence. Contained. Measured. As if even now he is still trying to reduce the moment into something manageable. Across from him, the evidence waits. Not as theory anymore. Not as reconstruction. But as record. The prosecution does not begin with emotion. They begin with structure.
Dates. Times.
Locations. The gas station footage reconstructed frame by frame. The 8 missing seconds explained through technical failure and human intervention. The vehicle movements traced across rural roads that once held nothing but dust and silence. And then the DNA. That is where the tone changes. Because DNA does not argue. It confirms. The partial fingerprint that once meant nothing now sits beside modern reconstruction analysis. The degraded genetic material from buried evidence now speaks with clarity it never had before. The glove box, the soil samples, the trace fibers, each one independently weak. Together, absolute. The prosecution does not need to dramatize it. The science does that on its own. When the victim's name is spoken in court, the room tightens. Not because it is new information, but because it is final now in a way it never was before. No longer a missing person. No longer a cold case. No longer a question suspended in time. A conclusion. The defense does what it can, but there is very little space left to move. No alternate suspect that holds. No procedural collapse that invalidates the evidence. No uncertainty large enough to create doubt where certainty has already formed. This is not a case of interpretation anymore. It is a case of accumulation. Every piece has found its place. And together, they form something that cannot be undone. The jury listens without visible reaction. But reactions are not needed. The structure of the case has already done what it was designed to do. It has removed ambiguity, layer by layer, year by year, until only one outcome remains visible. Outside the courthouse, the world is louder than inside it. Reporters speak over one another. Cameras shift. Headlines form in real time. Cold case killer convicted after DNA breakthrough. 1998 Texas disappearance finally solved. Justice decades in the making. But inside, there is no sense of celebration. Only resolution. When the verdict is read, it does not arrive as surprise. It arrives as confirmation of something already understood.
Guilty.
The word is simple, but it carries 28 years of silence with it. 28 years of unanswered questions, of false leads, of fading memory, of a town that learned to live beside absence without ever understanding it. The man does not react immediately. There is no visible collapse, no outburst, only a slow shift in posture, as if something internal has finally reached its endpoint. For the first time since his arrest, he looks less like someone in control of a situation and more like someone who has reached the end of his own structure. Not defeated in emotion, but completed in process. Sentencing follows. The details are procedural. Years. Terms. Legal language that attempts to quantify something that resists measurement. No sentence can return what was taken. No ruling can reconstruct what was erased. The court does not pretend otherwise. What it does is finalize responsibility. When he is led away, there is no dramatic resistance. No final statement shouted into the room. Only movement. Forward. Out of sight. The same controlled progression that defined every step of this case, now inverted. From control of narrative to absence of control entirely. Outside, the town reacts in layers. Some gather in quiet remembrance, others in relief. Some simply watch the courthouse steps, trying to reconcile the face they saw on television with the idea of what was hidden beneath it for so long. Because that is what remains most difficult to accept. Not the violence, not even the crime, but the proximity. The fact that it was never distant, never abstract, never hidden in some unreachable place. It existed here, in routine, in familiarity, in ordinary days that continued without interruption while something extraordinary remained buried just beneath them. Inside the investigation offices, the case file is not closed immediately. That process takes time. Evidence must be cataloged again, reports finalized, digital archives updated, physical materials sealed, chain of custody records signed and verified. Every piece that once existed in pursuit of truth is now reorganized into historical record. Cold case status removed. Active case closed. But no one treats it like it is over. Because cases like this do not end. They transition. From investigation to memory. From uncertainty to documentation. From unknown to understood. And yet even that understanding carries limits. Because there are still questions that cannot be answered fully. Not about identity, not about responsibility, but about nature. How a sequence of ordinary choices can converge into irreversible consequence. How predictability can become vulnerability. How systems built to protect can fail simply because the threat does not appear in expected form. Those questions remain long after the verdict. Long after the headlines fade. Long after the courtroom empties. Years later, the physical evidence is reduced to archival storage. The gloves, once buried in soil, now sealed in labeled containers. The fingerprint preserved digitally and physically. The photographs flattened into history. The cassette tape once looping static now silent in evidence custody. Nothing is active anymore. But nothing is gone. Because the case has changed state, not disappeared. It exists now as precedent, as study, as warning, as example of how time interacts with evidence in ways no one fully understood in 1998. Technology did not solve it alone. Time did not heal it. It was the combination of persistence and advancement that finally allowed the truth to surface. And that truth is simple in structure, but heavy in implication. Nothing in that night was invisible. It was only unreadable at the time. The final reflection does not belong to investigators or courtroom or media. It belongs to absence itself. The absence that once defined a truck on a dirt road. The absence that stretched across years without resolution. The absence that filled conversations, homes, and memory. That absence is no longer unknown. It has a cause, a structure, a name attached to it. And with that, the silence that protected it for so long loses its meaning. Because silence only holds power when nothing interrupts it. And now, something finally has. Not noise, not chaos, but truth. And truth, once introduced into silence,
does not leave quietly.